Oh, how perfect! How transcendently flawless, of course! I am what waits for us! I am my own worst enemy.
Hey everyone, Cool Kid here. With the release of the Old Peace update, DE gave us the Descendia, an assortment of random sequential floors capped off by a showdown with the Devil of Tau himself, Vice Regent Grand Carnus Admiral Roathe. I've seen some confusion surrounding how this boss actually works, primarily in regards to his insta-kills in the second phase, so I wanted to make this video to help clarify his mechanics. Before we get into that though, I want to make something clear. I know that you can just blow up Roathe and ignore the majority of his mechanics, but this video is not going to take that approach. If you want to grab Mesa, Valkyr, Kullervo, or anybody else who can turn Roathe into a fine mist, then that's totally cool, but this video is going to focus on engaging with the mechanics of the fight. I'm also going to be coming at this from the perspective of a solo player, as squad play makes him dissolve even faster. Similar to the Parita boss fights, Roathe's arena contains a spawner for both ammo and energy orbs, which refresh frequently. These spawners are opposite the throne and sit right next to each other, which makes them easy to locate and pick up. Do note that there's not a lot of cover in this arena, so mobility is the primary way you'll be avoiding attacks. Onto Roathe himself, he can't be armor stripped, so setups that focus on defense removal aren't great for this fight. Roathe also has status reduction, meaning that he has a cap of 4 for any given status effect, so pure status builds also struggle in this fight. There are a few status effects that are quite valuable though, and I want to highlight a handful of them now. Cold damage can be very useful for slowing Roathe down, which makes his attacks much easier to dodge while also slowing his fire rate. Viral is also able to affect Roathe up to 4 stacks, which is a solid bump in damage, and Magnetic can boost damage to his shields as well. Moving on to Roathe's attacks, his most basic method of dealing damage is firing shots from his Vinquibus. These shots are fast and pack a solid punch, but they can be dodged if you move quickly enough. Staying mobile and frequently rolling or bullet jumping can avoid the hail of bullets, or they can be tanked if you have high enough damage reduction. Strangely enough, Roathe does not use Vinquibus in melee combat, and when the player gets close, he'll continue to fire the gun in rifle form. Something you've probably noticed by now is that Roathe has 2 health bars, which separate each of his phases. During his first health bar, he has access to 3 abilities and 3 summons. All of these abilities and summons deal heat damage, in contrast to the puncture damage of the Vinquibus, though heat procs are surprisingly rare in this fight. To make things easier, I want to go over his abilities first, and then we'll get into what the summons do. Roathe's first ability is his Infernalis dodge. Roathe will quickly roll around the arena, targeting a player when he does so. This dodge deals damage and also inflicts a light stagger, which restricts most actions, like reloading, but does not restrict basic movement. This attack is quite fast, and the stagger can screw you over, but if you stay airborne, then Roathe won't be able to reach you, so taking the high, air is an effective strategy. Roathe's second ability is effectively a Flaming Virulence, where he slams the ground and launches a wave of fire. This attack deals high damage and leaves a lingering line of flames, though this time there's no stagger. Now, despite this being a ground slam, Roathe can send it at you while you're airborne. If you're on the ground, then you can dodge this attack by jumping, but the hitbox is quite tall, so you'll have to be pretty high. The easier method is to simply roll out of the way, as the stomp startup is pretty telegraphed. As long as you keep your eyes on the boss and have decent reaction time, this shouldn't be terribly hard to avoid. Roathe's last ability in this phase is Demonium, where he'll swipe his hand and launch 3 orbs at the player. These orbs have light tracking and explode on contact, dealing solid damage. While the orbs move fairly fast, they're pretty easy to see coming, and they can be avoided with a roll. Staying off the ground won't really save you from this attack, but frequent movement like rolls and bullet jumps can help keep you safe. Now, Roathe is a very chatty boss, but as far as I've noticed, most of his voice lines don't seem to signal anything specific. There are a few exceptions to this though, with the main one being his summons. Normally, Roathe will call out the name of a summon when he spawns them, though do note that he doesn't always do this. If he's opted to be quiet, you can still tell that he's calling in backup whenever he raises his hand and swipes it across the air. Roathe summons 2 of each demon whenever he spawns them in, as opposed to the 1 of each demon that players can wield, and he'll spawn them in duos. So, for example, if Roathe calls in Katanok, then he'll spawn 2 Katanoks, not a mix of different demons. He can only have 2 of any particular demon active, but he can spawn all 6 demons in succession, which gets pretty chaotic. This is actually a good thing though, as you can use these demons to activate conditionals like Galvanized Mods and Weapon Arcanes. While the demons don't normally drop any orbs, as far as I can tell at least, they can be forced to drop orbs with abilities like Fractured Blast, so frames like Citrine and Uriel can use them for energy and health generation. The summons are also quite fragile, having low health and defenses. Unlike Roathe, the summons do not have status reduction, and they can be armor stripped, so keep that in mind. Moving on to the individual summons, the first up is Cardinal shoots out a chain that slowly flies through the arena, moving in a straight line. Any players who are hit by this chain are slowed for 5 or 6 seconds, on top of a heat proc that doesn't deal very much damage. This slow can be extremely dangerous in combination with Roathe's other abilities, especially his second phase attacks and Infernalis dodge. The slow from the chain will massively prolong the stagger from the dodge, making you incapable of shooting or reloading for the slow's entire duration if you're unlucky. The slow also makes dodging any of Roathe's attacks pretty much impossible, which makes his insta-kills later on extremely dangerous. In my opinion, avoiding the chain should be top priority until Cardinal is killed. Jumping is a pretty reliable method for avoiding this attack, as is rolling out of the way if you see it coming. Fortunately, like all of the summons, Cardinal is pretty squishy, so killing both of them isn't really that hard. Next up is the one you've all been waiting for. Our Golfagoat is actually pretty underwhelming in this boss fight, as all he does is latch onto a player and deal low damage directly to their health pool. Golfagor will do a little spin move before rocketing towards his target for the latch, so he's pretty easy to dodge with a simple roll. If Golfagor does latch you, then you can't do much to actually shake him off, but he can still be damaged by melee slams, so you can use those to try and kill him if he's stuck to you. Being stuck isn't too bad though, as Golfagor simply deals 25 true damage per second for about 10 seconds before detaching. Now, the wiki says that Golfagor inflicts players with a heat debuff, but I have no clue what they're talking about. I've never witnessed anything like this myself, so if anybody knows what they're referring to here, then please do let me know. For the last of the summons, we have who focuses on damage and area control. While active, Vythelis will spawn a circle underneath the player, which will slowly close in. Once it fully closes in, the circle will stop tracking the player and briefly hold before detonating. This detonation inflicts a heat proc as well as a knockdown, alongside a brief patch of fire that inflicts a heat proc as well. This attack is quite threatening all things considered, but all it takes is a roll to avoid. Just keep an eye on the circle and roll before it detonates. Or, send Vythelis to the 9th circle with some well-placed buckshot. The wiki also states that Vythelis boosts Roathe's shield regeneration, but again, I've never noticed this myself. Now that we're through all of the summons, I want to bring up a very interesting strategy to counter them: Radiation. As far as I've noticed, Radiation procs on the summons will cause them to attack each other, and they can even attack Roathe directly. They'll also take damage from Roathe's attacks, which makes them a self-solving problem at that point. I know this isn't at all needed with how easy the summons are to kill, but I do think it's a really cool way to approach the fight. Now that we're through the basic attacks, let's talk about Roathe's second phase. Once the player torches his first health bar, Roathe will become invincible and enter phase 2, which grants him one of 3 new attacks. To reiterate, Roathe only gains 1 new attack, which is pulled at random from a pool of 3 possible attacks. Each of these attacks features assistance from Marie, Leon, or both, which further distinguishes them from regular attacks. You'll know pretty quickly which attack Roathe got because he'll do it as soon as he enters a second phase, and each attack also plays this sound cue during its startup. Alright, let's go over set attacks now. First up is Infernalis slams, which is signaled by Roathe surrounding himself in Hellfire and crouching in the middle of the arena. After a brief moment, he'll float up into the air and lock onto a player, choosing them as his target. He'll track this target's position until he flashes, which means that Roathe has locked in his trajectory. Shortly after the flash, Roathe will leap at the target and slam the ground, insta-killing all allies caught inside his slam radius. This attack goes through pretty much all forms of invincibility, including Void Mode, Overguard, and even Assimilate, so when I say it's an insta-kill, I mean it. This attack can be avoided by rolling or bullet jumping away once Roathe flashes, but there's an extra layer here that can turn the tide in your favor. When Roathe begins the startup for this attack, Marie will spawn in front of the throne. This signals that a reservoir has spawned somewhere in the room, and if the player baits Roathe into slamming himself into that reservoir, then he'll lose all of his shields, take a chunk of damage, and be stunned briefly. It's pretty easy to see the reservoir by standing next to Marie and looking out at the arena, so if you have trouble finding them, then I'd recommend that approach. It's also worth pointing out that Roathe's slam attack deals no damage if he hits a reservoir, so there's no need to dodge if he successfully baited into one. Next up, we have Enhanced Demonium, where Roathe will stand in the middle of the room and raise his hand. Shortly after, tens of demonium orbs will start spewing out, flying around the room and tracking players. Hits from these orbs will ignite the player and deal very high damage, so avoiding them is strongly advised. Fortunately, during the startup of this attack, Leon will spawn along the walls of the room and begin channeling his Thurible. Or, I think that's what's supposed to be happening. This channeling will spawn a zone around Leon, and standing in this zone makes the player invincible. You have a few seconds before the orbs that Roathe spawns begin falling to the ground, so take that opportunity to duck and cover with the priest. Stepping into the bubble will also cleanse any status effects you might have, so if you've been hit by any orbs, then you can clear the heat proc this way as well. Unlike the other Phase 2 attacks, Roathe is vulnerable while casting Enhanced Ammonium, so if you're taking shelter with Leon, then you can lay on lots of damage from safety. Now, I want to quickly mention that Leon's bubble disappears right before this attack actually finishes, so there will still be a few orbs falling to the ground. Once Roathe himself stops spawning orbs, then make sure you're ready to roll, as Leon won't protect you from any strays that are still out once the attack ends. I have also seen this attack bug out and not spawn Leon at all, so if that happens, then camping in operator form is also a viable way to avoid this attack. You won't get the free damage window, but you also won't be dead, so I'd say it's worth it. Lastly, we have Brimstone, which starts with Roathe becoming invulnerable and floating up into the air. Once he reaches his apex, 4 chained runes will spawn around him, along with a fire aura that steadily grows. If these runes aren't picked up in time, Roathe will detonate, insta-killing all players and ending the boss fight. Like Infernalis Leaps, this insta-kill goes through pretty much all forms of invincibility, so keep that in mind. To avoid this attack, you need to physically touch every single rune, which will end the attack and cause Roathe to plummet to the floor. Once he hits the ground, Leon and Marie will appear, each using their own attack on Roathe. Leon will use Condemn to remove all of Roathe's shields, and Marie will fire Soulgate to chunk a bit of his health. The player can also freely lay on damage while he's in this state, so don't let the Zealots have all the fun. Now, I want to reiterate that every single rune has to be picked up, as even just one will allow the attack to complete. You can tell how close Roathe is to blowing up by how large his heat aura is, and once you hear the Void Tongue, you've got mere seconds before death. Picking up his runes does more than just stop the attack though, as they also grant Uriel's Demonium buff. This grants 30% more fire rate and heat elemental ammo, which is the same as Uriel's runes without any mods. This is ultimately a little thing, but I do think it's cool. Once you've made it to the end of Roathe's second health bar, he'll teleport above the throne. Now you have to fight the real boss, the Cuck Chair. This thing has so much object health. It's not like you're under any threat in this part of the boss fight, but damn dude, why does it take so long to kill? So, that's Roathe's boss fight. His attacks, his counters, and hopefully an explanation as to why you keep being insta-killed. I've really been enjoying the Descendia since its release, and I'm very glad that it's capped off with such a fun and interactive boss. Honestly, I really hope we see a super boss Roathe in the future, with additional mechanics that make him a bigger threat. Maybe he could summon all 6 of his demons at once? Or maybe he'll have all 3 of his Phase 2 attacks at the same time. I don't know what the future holds, but I certainly hope that this isn't the last we've seen of Roathe. When you learn how to approach the fight's mechanics and weave through his attacks, this battle is nothing short of absolute cinema.